Good morning and happy day after New Year's. Today we're back in the same place basically as yesterday. We heard some potential wood knocks, so the game plan today is going to follow up on that. See if we can produce anything or have it repeat. So that's going to be our plan today. And we're going to get moving. We had a better drone flight today than we did yesterday because the phone had more juice and we planned it out more. So that's our plan. Let's hit it and let's see what we find out. In the same basic area from the other day. We're going to hope to repeat some wood knocks or not, but as is true of this area in the last 2 weeks, every day is different weather conditions. Yesterday was basically just dry forest. Today they had rain overnight, and up here it's colder than down where I live, and the camera would stop tilting. Basically it froze, and then now the temperature's coming back up and all the ice is falling off the trees. So totally different from yesterday. I'm going to restart the camera because the thing's being a pain in the ass. The camera's getting wet, so it's being temperamental. I had to move further up to where we were going to be to get away from where the water's just constantly dripping down on it. So I acknowledge the limitations of some of the day. So as I said before, yeah, we have there was a freeze overnight, and the freeze is like melting now as the temperature comes up. we're in an area where we may have had wood knocks in the general vicinity of, so we're going to wonder if they, hopefully between the wind and the constant pattering of the rain and the falling ice, we're not going to have that drown out any potential repeat of that. That's kind of the plan for today, just basically a follow-up on what could have been an interesting situation yesterday. And hopefully the camera will behave as we're now under the sun and not getting dripped on so much. This area is a little more open up than the immediate previous stretch of woods where it's getting dripped on all the time, so I admitted defeat. It was basically going to be an exercise in futility till we got up here, and if it was wet up here, it was going to get all nasty too. So we were here last week and it was quiet, but yesterday we had, I'm going to say from off that direction, some potential wood knocks. So we may bushwhack into here a little bit and look for sign, see if God forbid we flush something out, that kind of thing. And all right, we'll try that again. The camera just is still having personality issues. So this may be a video with a comedy of errors on it. And we'll see how we do. As I said, the sun is coming out, so hopefully it'll dry out and behave itself. If we do capture anything, because that would be Murphy's Law. To have something happen just as the camera fails. That has happened before. I wonder how many other people that do this have similar stories to tell. Got to kind of be careful here too, because some of the rocks here still have ice on them, and that is where you slip and do things that are bad for you. So far holding true. The area up here is more open, so not getting constantly dripped on as much. So we'll come up here, get a little further in, then I'm going to probably go quiet for a while for the sake of listening in a little more. And we'll do that. Oh, okay. Saw some large berry-looking things. I took a minute to realize they're chestnuts. They're not the normal color, or something like that. Momentary brain fart. But, all right. If anything is going to happen, kind of entering into flavor country right now. So, let's see what happens. Probably nothing with my luck, but we'll see. As you can see, this is kind of a logged out area. It was logged out probably about 6-7 years ago. And so you have kind of like a mixed forest now. You get further in, it's going to get thicker again, so we'll see if I need a segment break about then. But yeah, so I'm expecting a walkout to be pretty soggy because everything that was ice before will be water by then. It's supposed to be in the mid-40s today, so that's enough to melt most of this. Minor change in plans. Let's cut across this real quick. If this isn't all ice, of course it is. Maybe over here. Wait. Less ice on this one. Okay. Kind of cut through this little man-made meadow here. Walk out to the tree line real quick. Was probably a better choice to fly the drone where I did than up here. More trees, more wind, more chance for mishaps. Although, at some point in the next 2 years, I'll have to decide what I do with my drone fleet, given that I went into yesterday about remote ID and what it means for drone folks. So, got some time to think about it, but I should think about it, because what I'm thinking is in the course of the time it takes this system to roll out the tech to support it, there's going to be a new generation of drones that come out that are going to be more advanced. And if you have the remote ID and you play by the rules and do things the way they want, damn, it's windy up here, you have more control over your hobby. So it's a matter of playing ball with the FAA. So I'm just glad, again, they didn't curtail the parts that would have affected me on a negative basis. Like they wouldn't be able to fly drones in an area where you have no internet connectivity. That's kind of unfair. Because that's a place where you're least likely to cause disruptions with anybody's business. Doesn't seem fair. Let's go down and have a look at the tree line, and then I'm going to shut up for a bit too. So, thick underbrush, piney stuff. I'm going to head back towards the side trail over here. The wind is going to be a challenger for hearing anything, I guess. Pardon me. Runny nose. Yeah, definitely a better idea to fly where I did. On a side note, while I'm talking about droning, though, if you fly into wind like this, there's a trick to this. If you have a drone big enough to not get blown away in the first place. When you head out, you fly against the wind. Because if you end up running low on battery or something, it's a lot better to have the wind at your back when it's blowing like this than it is otherwise. Otherwise, that's how people buy new drones after a spectacular crash, potentially. If you look on YouTube, there are some good ones. And some that are like really brazenly in violation of FAA regulations. One guy had a drone that was worth like $1,300. The thing crashed from 800 feet. And he was flying so high above where you're supposed to be. The legal limit at least in the US, is 400 feet. So technically you're in violation if you're at 401. This guy was, by his claim anyway, 1,000 meters. So at that point you have a, not a little Spark like mine, but, or a Mavic Mini or something. You're talking like a full Inspire level drone, which is fairly big. And you're in like air travel lanes at that point, and a potential risk to airliners and the like. So I mean, if the guy had been on the hook for any kind of mishap with an airplane, good luck with that. Aside from the fines, think jail time. And probably a lot of it. Especially if he caused any fatalities like a crash or anything. I would not want to be on the hook for that. The difference between a Spark and an Inspire is a Spark would probably bounce off the hull and then just fall to the ground and crash and die. An Inspire, if it got into the engines or something, could break an engine and cause issues with a small to medium plane. And if that goes down and you have liability for that, yikes. That's the kind of thing I like to avoid. So, nothing along the tree line. Like I said, I don't really expect to find much because, I mean, there was really no way yesterday to gauge where the actual distance to the source was. Because what they don't tell you is these woods actually run up against a land trust, which owns a good chunk of the immediate area, and it kind of shares that with a watershed too. So it's kind of a mixed region, and all of these regions are fairly large. So to get in from the far side of the land, you'd have to actually drive, let's say 5 miles into Massachusetts, potentially on the other side, and come in north to south to get in. Or you can, I mean, if you bushwhack, I mean, I do know a fair amount of these woods, like to the point where I could bushwhack through and take longer, but have more detail. And I may do that today if I hear anything. Have them in like Vermont too, but stacked. Oh, this is a stone wall, the kind that are common throughout New England. Connecticut and Mass, and like in Rhode Island in particular. I would presume you have them in like in the camera happy. I haven't seen them there quite as much. Might have to be a little more careful here. This looks a little more frozen. And if it gets drippier, I might have to take a segment break again too, like I warned. For the sake of keeping the camera happy. Kind of get it up. But I do know that hunters get back in there too, because there's at least one tree stand back in there I've come across in my explorations. It's in better shape than the one on the lower trail that's to the south, the northeast of here, sorry. And it's getting drippier. I might take a segment break. In fact, I think I will. We'll see how the conditions change or don't. Anything per se, but we are going to do a little bushwhacking into this. I don't know how far down we're going to go because this is all downhill, so naturally coming up, it's going to be back uphill. But in this weird mix of wet leaves and I'm going to call it slush at this point. It's not really ice anymore. Potential for finding something if you have indents. Kind of like we did yesterday, but I kind of torn on what it was though, because it looked bigger than deer, but it didn't. Normally when you find a trackway for a moose, you find moose plop nearby. I don't recall seeing any yesterday, but as we just had the last week of deer season too, it could have possibly been a hunter coming through too. So, can't rule out humans either, unfortunately. But we can go down a ways into this before we get into this stringy stuff down here. Then we'll see how we feel about things. Surprisingly less drippy in here as you got more tree cover over you, so it's coming down, but more sporadically. Ow. Not really sure I want to go back up on an icy boulder field either. And kind of cut over this way and get off of the boulder field for an easier ascent, such as it's gradual, but still, boulders make things a little more tricky. And the trouble is, it gets really thick after we go down this much further. It's really thick in there again, and steep. Throw a little ice in there, considering that it's probably going to be darker in there. You might not have as much melt. It might get slick. But so yeah, going down the side of this mountain, if you want a glorified hill mountain, it gets steep, and yeah, what the hell, we'll take a look. We're going to kind of cut across the backside of yet another boulder field and try to go down parallel to it. It does seem to get pretty thick in here. I'll walk down to the tree line of it. That's about as far down as I'm going to go, though, I think. I'd like to remember where the hell that tree stand is, though, because that would, if outside of deer season, that might make for a decent night op location for a while. Maybe not all night, but a couple hours anyway. I'm going to go to where this log is and then peer down here. Because after that, you can see where it's like a little gradual, and then it drops off radically. And while it is the Nutmeg State, may not have the steepest cliffs, there are some steepish inclines in here. And right down there after that boulder, if you can see where the boulder is, it gets really steep and really thick. I don't really come on a day like today. I'm not going to really come back up through that. So we're going to start heading back up the way here. We're not really that far down. We kind of went at a parallel, but let us avoid the boulder field just because, and start making our way back up, all the while looking for indents or anything interesting. But a boulder field's kind of a crappy choice for that because you already have a lot of texture on the ground. That being like this. But I still think you'd be able to hear wood knocks if, even with the wind, which is, I don't know, we're talking like, what, 20 mile an hour winds right now? Maybe a little less. Possibly amplified sound-wise because you're at the top of the mountain and there's nothing really in the way of letting it be heard. So there's some deer pellets. But if it's all quiet, it's all quiet. On a warmer day, we'll go deeper down into this. If only because if I did go all the way down and got into that thick stuff, I do know basically where I would end up on the other side, and I could walk back out on the trail. after, how long would that be? Maybe a mile down the hill. Maybe. Maybe not quite a mile, but close. It is a fairly big stretch of woods. But while I make my way back up, we're going to make a segment break here.